Hello everyone, Tekken 8 preparation continues. Welcome to our Bryan primer. Bryan is the game's quintessential keep out character. His pressure comes from that, although when he gets in your face, he can be scary, but that scare factor is locked behind some execution with his taunt. So if you like that defensive spacing playstyle with a big execution component, Bryan is the right fit for you. As with our other primers, this video should give you a good quick rundown on the character to jumpstart your learning and get you playing some matches. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but you should already know a little bit about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial for the whole game, since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character specific guides. But enough of all that, let's begin. We're going to do things a little backwards here because Bryan at his core is really a defensive keep out character. He wants to harass you in such a way as to catch an easy whiff punish or catch you trying to run in on him or just make you hesitate and eat a counter hit. That said, I can't teach you the basics of spacing in a guide like this, but I can suggest the best tools for that function. Your bread and butter from way far out is 3+4. For all practical purposes, it's safe on block due to the pushback even at close range, but it hits really hard on normal hit and gives a big combo on counter hit. It's also a mid. Given its range, you can build an entire game plan around just that. And yes, you should be using it as often as possible. Technically, it can be stepped, but you can mitigate that greatly by simply moving around, since even the smallest realignment will make it clip a stepper. Now that big one out of the way, there are a bunch more to keep in mind. Standing 4 is your typical fast counter hit launcher designed almost specifically to eat up jabs, and he has a safe-ish mid follow-up option with 4-3 should you want that. Forward 4 is a safe homing counter hit launcher. You'll use it a lot like 3+4, it's just that the forward input makes it a little more difficult to use while trying to move backward, and it's a high, so there's a duck risk. But you don't have to worry about it getting stepped. Back to mids, you have back 1 and forward 3, which are both strong mids that can give advantage on block and will also launch on counter hit. Forward 3 in particular is a Bryan player favorite since it has really strong tracking. Forward back 2 is another very quick safe launcher, although another high, but always a threat when you're in range. Your biggest concern with any of these is mostly if they whiff, since they take considerable time to recover, but even his jabs can present a counter hit threat with 1-2-1, which ends with a safe mid counter hit launcher. So it's important to remind your opponent that you can launch them for any bad timing issues on their part. In terms of more standard defense, he has a bunch of other tools too. His up forward 4 is the originator of the term orbital, which simply refers to any low crushing mid launcher. It's safe and very scary. That's really the only low crush you need. For high crushes, you can either do a quick interrupt poke like a crouch jab or use his crouch dash or CD to go under things, which is just a quarter circle forward motion. CD1 is simply his while standing one, which is a mid launcher with tons of pushback on block, so that's the most common. Bryan's block punishment is a little goofy because for quick punishes, all he has is some light poking with 1-4, 2-3, and down forward 2-1, but he starts launching at 14 frames with forward back 2, which not all characters can do. Although it takes considerable practice to be able to do that on the fly. It's also a really important whiff punisher alongside things like forward 4-1, so it's worth it to practice. His crouch punishers are thankfully a bit more standard with while standing 4, while standing 3, full crouch down forward 2-1, and while standing 1. It should also be mentioned that his forward 4-2 armor move is a classic and can splat, and he has a punch parry to counter those pesky jab harassers. Regardless, for defense, you can keep it really simple and place a heavy emphasis on your movement and 3+4. Then, if you see opportunities for easy forward back 2s or forward 4s and so on, go ahead and do those. Now that we've established Bryan's counter hit game a little, we can talk a bit more about offense. It should be noted that he can kind of play a more traditional mix-up game, the big low threat being his sway 3. And you will definitely see Bryans that favor this move to break defenses. However, the main problem is that it's a little on the slow side, it doesn't give a knockdown or normal hit, it's fairly risky on block against a lot of characters, and you can step it. If they decide to stay in there and defend it though, it can certainly get a lot of work done since you have some solid mids to mix it up with, the obvious one one being Sway 4. However, the bigger problem is that that's all he has in terms of pressure lows, and he doesn't have much of a grab game. His low pokes should not be ignored since they're great harass tools, these being moves like down 3, down 4, down back 3, and down 3+4, but none of these give advantage on hit, and they don't give much reward unless you want to take a risky guess with a string follow-up. So that leaves us with his taunt, which is the thing that elevates him in tier lists. It's fairly simple to understand, but very execution heavy. The taunt itself is done with 1+3+4. It does no damage, but it's a mid-guard break that on impact gives him a very brief window to land an attack. In the open, the magic is taunt into forward back 2. At the wall, he can do that, but he can also do back 4, which gives a free forward back 2 or forward 2 on hit, so massive damage. While the taunt is not fast per se, it's normally fast enough to beat any kind of get-up option after a knockdown, making it fantastic in get-up situations as well. But its slowish speed is why you need people to slow down so you can use it. Overall, it's very nasty and extremely hard to defend given how devastating his counter hit game is should your opponent try to challenge you. Difficulty for you is being able to do the cancel. I wish I had some tips or tricks for you, but the fact is that the timing is just really hard and takes significant commitment to get the back 4 or forward back 2 consistent enough to apply in a real match. That said, until you get to the point where you can do that, anything faster will be significantly easier and still worth it. So things like 2-3, 4-3, or forward 2-1-4. So you can at least still implement the foundational element of the taunt while you work on getting the hard stuff down. Now, the other thing you can do, which will close out this section, is play some string mind games. The entire idea here is to get them to over defend so you can do a taunt or Sway 3 follow-up, or they get impatient and swing into the string. You have a ton of options here. Down forward 2 is very common since it's a quick safe mid poke that has a safe follow-up option or a big counter hit launching mid. 1+2 is another that works the exact same way, so a safe high option or an unsafe mid counter hit launch option. Down 2 is another safe mid poke with yet another counter hit launching mid. Down 2-3 is actually really scary at the wall since the mid will splat on normal hit and it'll still combo if the down 2 hits counter hit. 3-2-1 is a safe triple mid that actually has a canned mid-low mix-up for the 4th hit. The mid splats on hit 2, making it very annoying at the wall. Down forward 1 is a fun machine gun punch string. You can delay every hit, and if any of them lands, you can finish the string for a nice chunk of damage. Now, these are some of the more common ones, but there are many more that we can mention. However, all of these strings come with inherent risks, so just play around with the ones you like and use them as best you can. And don't forget about some more traditional pressure tools like running 3 or forward 1+2, both of which are heavy hitters that give you advantage on block. Otherwise, aside from some gimmicky stuff that we won't get into, that's really it. Play the keep out game, mix in your strings, chop at the ankles occasionally, and work on your taunt game. Okay, couple final notes to wrap up. We didn't talk extensively about his sway, his CD, or his crouch game in general because a lot of it is situational, which is a bit too deep for this guide, but he has some powerful options there like his CD 1+2, which is a really strong wall bouncer. So just play around with them and sprinkle those in when you can. As usual, we'll skip juggles, but check out the link in the video description below for some basic sample combos. Lastly, we'll note his rage drive, which is just a beefed up version of his back 1. It's faster, gives more advantage on block, and gives a combo on normal hit instead of just counter hit. It's an overall incredible tool. This brings us to the end of the primer. I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe and we'll see you next time.